Today for our POTA activation, I've chosen Pleasant Creek State Recreation Area in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. This is park number US 4372, and I've chosen this location for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a beautiful Friday afternoon. Number two, the boat launch is usually fairly vacant. Number three, the ground plane afforded to us by the water in the surrounding area is very advantageous for HF operations, but perhaps number four, most importantly, proximity to the bathroom. These features and amenities cannot be overstated. We'll be operating mobile today using the trusty ATAS 120 Alpha conversation starter antenna you can see in the background, but we won't be using the FT891, but rather we'll be using the big guns today, the Yaesu FT-DX number 10. Anytime I have the opportunity to actually plan a POTA activation, I try to bring out the big guns. It's more fun and for sure more effective, although the performance of the Yaesu FT891 cannot be overstated. It does a fantastic job, especially when you just want to get on the air in the parking lot of the hotel you're staying at or at your lunch break. Now, to complement this high-speed, low-drag operation, we'll be using the Heil Pro 7 headset here. One quick thing about this model, I tried for quite a while to get my aviation headset, the Bose A20, to work with various makes and models of radio with no real success. That being said, the performance of the Pro 7 is very effective. It's tried, true, and trusted in my book. And it's also good to note here that this particular headset is outfitted with the DX microphone element. So that's supposed to cut the lows and emphasize the highs in your voice, which gets you through HF a little bit more effectively. I've got great audio reports using the stock DSP settings on the DX10, and can't say enough about this unit. Now, I'll mention that the A20s are active noise cancellation. These are passive noise canceling, and they work just fine. They're comfortable to wear for a long period of time, and I've had great success with them. I highly recommend them, which I can't say the same about other Heil headset models I've used in the past. So that might be worthy of another video in the future. We'll have to go ahead and see. But today, this is what we'll be using. Another aspect of this setup, which I think is worth noting, is the ease at which you can go from a single setup with the FT891 and transfer all the controls and switches and whatnot to the FT-DX10. And that includes power connector, the antenna, and the ground cable. So I guess the most important component here is that the power cable is the same power cable. But just to give you a quick glance into how I operate here, I just take all of the inputs and outputs of the FT891 and transfer them to the FT-DX10. Very convenient, very easy, and I have it all resting on a RAM laptop mount. So it's a multifaceted setup here because you can also put your sandwich there, which I find helpful. While all this is going on, I always make sure to run my VHF UHF radio. In this case, this is the Yaesu FTM 500 Delta on in the background, and I leave it on the 2-meter calling frequency, and sometimes I'll scan between the 2-meter and 70-centimeter calling frequency. But I always leave APRS squawking in VFOB with the POTA information because, after all, POTA is meant to be very much a group activity, and so I want to encourage other hams in the area either to work me if available or to come down and join me. So if you happen to see me squawk an APRS POTA notification, feel free to track me down and come say hello. Here's a totally free life hack you can use. Print the band plan and stick it somewhere innocuous in your vehicle so you don't forget. So finally, the logging software. I use Hammers on either an iPhone or an iPad to log all of today's conversations and easily export everything to QRZ and then Logbook of the World. And then, of course, Parks on the Air's website. One of the things I like about the software is it's super easy to use. Once you hit the little grid square button there, it'll tell you what grid square you're in. And once you start amassing QSOs, it'll generate a map showing where you're getting into. Now, one of the fun things to do with that is once you make a couple of contacts, you'll have a pretty good idea. If you're staying on the same band, you'll have a pretty good idea where propagation's doing and what the orientation of your vehicle is doing. So, if you rotate your vehicle 90 degrees, what does that do to influence your QSOs? It's a fun little experiment that I highly recommend, especially if you're having not the greatest luck. Maybe the opportunity to change bands, or maybe you just need to reorient the vehicle. Another item you may want to consider during a POTA activation is bringing some sort of business card or banner or stickers or pamphlets, whether you're participating on behalf of a club or as an individual. It's always good to give people a way to contact you after the fact in the event somebody might be interested in learning more, perhaps getting a license or participating in club activities. It's a great way to interface with the public, and it's a great way to recruit additional ham radio operators. Just make sure they're low sodium. So something I think is interesting and worth mentioning. Let's see, this right here, that's my operating frequency. This band of RFI was hanging out right where I was operating. Now, the thing you'll notice with environmental QRM or QRN, QR November, is that depending on band conditions, they may just move out of your way at some point. I thought that was interesting because it started right on top of me and it's now slowly shifting up band. So interesting food for thought, something to consider, especially when the bands are crowded. An area that looks QR any may quiet down at some point during your operation. Anyway, and so concludes a very successful POTA activation at Pleasant Creek State Recreation Area. Wound up with about 151 QSOs, and really it was an absolute ball, especially towards the end. My strategy of sticking to 20 and parking wasn't real effective in this go around. As soon as I moved to 40 after 3 or so hours of operating, it was just a continuous pileup, which was fantastic. And I wish I had made the transition a little bit earlier, but it just goes to show you that you really do need to be comfortable changing up your strategy depending on band conditions. And I wasn't having a whole lot of luck on 20, but I was being stubborn and I was committed to staying there. But one of the things I mentioned earlier that I really like about the software, this Hammers application for iOS, is the fact that it'll show you a map of the performance of your antenna based on the QSOs you log. And so I made a couple of DX QSOs, mostly domestic, but you can see that the antenna performed fairly equally in all directions. So pretty excited about that. I like that it's consistent. Um, so this incorporates two frequencies and two bands, so one on 20 and one on 40 meters, and it just performed very well. And so that's why I can't recommend the ATAS 120 Alpha highly enough, because for the form factor and everything that's required to make it work, it just works. It doesn't work flawlessly, but it works really, really well. And if you're you know, just looking to make as many contacts as you can and exchange as many QSL cards as possible, which is my goal, it's a great option. And whether you're using the Big Rig FTDX10 or the FT891, you can find a form factor that's appropriate for your application and absolutely send it.